My name is Avery Schmidt. I'm 19 and my pronouns are she, they.
Folks. Everything I just said was gone.
The history of queer media, it's not as overt as we'd like to think that it is. I think that my favorite examples of queer media are very, subtextual. Queer love stories aren't as straightforward as, a regular straight rom-com. Usually there's that extra layer of societal, distance between them, if that makes sense. So it's not as overt. Specifically in the horror genre, I think that there's just, a level of, unnatural. There's usually other elements outside of just it being a traditional love story. So I think queer people are usually represented as outcasts, villains, or, social outcasts. So it's not as overt as we'd like to think that it is. Especially, when you go back, lots of 80s horror movies have super, homosexual subtext, because having, an out and proud queer character doesn't really exist and it wasn't as watchable. So my favorite queer media usually is a lot more subtextual. Recently there's been a lot of embracing queer culture and queer joy. I love watching media that feels joyful and genuine and authentic, and I think with shows like Drag Race that's become so mainstream and popular, it's so exciting to see that side of the queer community represented and celebrated. I feel the same way about ballroom dance. I think that recently on Broadway off Broadway there was a ballroom revival of Cats, and it was so well received, and it just tying together this old queer culture and bringing it to new audiences is really cool. There is a division between the older queer community who spent so much of their lives not being able to be their authentic selves and spending so much time either fighting or hiding. Growing up when it's cool to be queer and it's cool to be different and it's exciting and it's celebrated, but I think there's a huge division between the older queer community and the younger gay community. Not gay. The younger queer community, because we've kind of been handed this opportunity to be authentic, which everyone should be entitled to, celebrating who they are. But with all of the recent orders in, the White House and everything, I don't think that queer youth knows the history of queer culture. I don't think that I do. I think most of my knowledge comes from media, and I think recently there's been a resurgence of media that takes place in the big, the 50s Lavender Scare and the 80s AIDS epidemic, which is media that I'm really drawn to, but I think that the older generation of queer people spent so much of their lives fighting and protesting and just going through so much, and young queer people have been kind of handed this ability to be themselves without that fight. But recently, with everything that's been going on in politics, I think that it is time for young queer people to step up and take the place of the older generation, because it is our
If anyone wants to fund us.
Yeah, I'll put my Venmo in the link down below. Make sure to like and subscribe. And watch the ads all the way through so that I get that check.